When Sarah walked into the most exclusive boutique in the city wearing her simple thrift store dress, the staff expected nothing more than an easy target for their cruelest game. What happened when she returned 3 months later didn't just shock everyone in that marble-floored temple of luxury. It shattered every assumption they held about worth, respect, and who deserves to be treated with dignity. Sometimes the most powerful transformations happen not in the person who was wronged, but in those who discover the true cost of their arrogance. The crystal chandeliers cast rainbow patterns across the pristine white marble floor as Sarah Martinez stepped through the heavy glass doors of Belmont and Associates, the city's most exclusive luxury boutique. The scent of expensive perfume and leather filled the air, mixing with the soft classical music that seemed to whisper of wealth and privilege. This wasn't just any store. This was where the city's elite came to spend more on a single handbag than most people earned in a month. Sarah had saved for 18 months to afford even the smallest purchase here, carefully setting aside $10 here, $20 there, from her job as a night shift cleaner at the downtown office complex. Today was special. Today was her daughter Emma's graduation from nursing school, and Sarah wanted to buy her something meaningful, something that said "I'm proud of you" in a way that words alone never could. She wore her best dress, a simple navy blue number she'd found at the thrift store and carefully altered herself. Her shoes were polished but worn, her purse small and practical. She looked exactly like what she was, a hard-working mother who had scraped together every penny for this one special moment. The boutique was a cathedral of consumption, with silk scarves displayed like religious artifacts and handbags presented on individual pedestals like sculptures in a museum. Soft lighting highlighted each item's perfection while making the prices almost invisible unless you looked closely. Sarah had done her research. She knew exactly what she wanted: a simple pearl necklace from the classic collection, elegant but not ostentatious, the kind of timeless piece that would remind Emma of this achievement forever. Behind the polished counter stood Victoria Sterling, the boutique's manager, a woman whose entire identity had been constructed around her position as gatekeeper to luxury. At 42, she moved through the store with the predatory grace of someone who had spent years perfecting the art of sizing up customers in the first 3 seconds. Her silk blouse cost more than Sarah's monthly rent, her shoes were Italian leather, and her smile was as cold and calculated as a business transaction. Victoria noticed Sarah immediately. Everything about her screamed "doesn't belong here," from her simple dress to her careful way of looking at price tags to the slight nervousness in her posture. Victoria had built her career on reading people, on knowing within moments whether someone was worth her time or merely an inconvenience to be managed. This woman, clearly, was the latter. Standing nearby was Jennifer Walsh, Victoria's assistant, a younger woman whose cruelty was still sharp and unrefined, lacking the sophisticated venom that Victoria had perfected over the years. Jennifer looked at Sarah with barely concealed disdain, already anticipating the entertainment value of what was about to unfold. They had played this game before, these guardians of privilege, turning away those who didn't meet their unspoken standards of worthiness. "Excuse me," Sarah said softly as she approached the counter, her voice carrying the slight accent of someone for whom English was a second language. "I'm looking for a gift for my daughter. She's graduating from nursing school tomorrow." Victoria's smile never wavered, but something cold flickered in her eyes. "Of course," she replied, her tone professionally pleasant while carrying an undertone that suggested this interaction was already a waste of her time. "And what price range were you considering?" Sarah had rehearsed this moment. "I have $800, she said clearly. "I was hoping to find a nice pearl necklace from your classic collection." The number hung in the air between them. $800 was exactly what Sarah had saved, the culmination of months of sacrifice, of choosing between heating bills and groceries, of walking to work instead of taking the bus. To Victoria, it was barely worth acknowledging. "800, Victoria repeated, as if the amount physically pained her to say. "Oh my. Well, I'm afraid our classic pearl collection starts at $1,200 for the most basic pieces. The nicer ones, the ones you might actually want to give as a graduation gift, those start around $2,000. Jennifer smirked from behind a display case, already sensing where this was heading. Victoria continued with practiced ease, her voice taking on the tone of someone explaining something to a child. "You see, our pieces here are investment quality. They're not costume jewelry or department store accessories. These are heirloom pieces, designed for clients who understand true luxury. Sarah felt heat rise in her cheeks but kept her voice steady. I understand quality. Perhaps I could look at what's available in my price range? Anything at all? Victoria exchanged a glance with Jennifer, a look that said, "Watch this." Of course, she said sweetly. Jennifer, would you show our customer the starter collection? The way she said starter collection made it sound like charity. Jennifer led Sarah to a small corner display that felt deliberately hidden from the main shopping area. Here we have some lovely pieces, Jennifer said with false enthusiasm. They're very popular with people who are just beginning to appreciate fine jewelry. The items in the case were beautiful but clearly positioned as the store's budget options, displayed in a way that made them seem almost apologetic for their own existence. Sarah examined a simple gold chain with a small pendant, elegant in its simplicity. This is lovely, she said. What's the price? $750, Jennifer replied. But I should mention that all our pieces come with a significant service charge for sizing, gift wrapping, and authentication. That would bring the total to about $920. Sarah's heart sank. She was so close, but that extra $120 might as well have been $1,000. She had exactly $800, not a penny more. I see, she said quietly. I only have $800. Jennifer's expression shifted from false politeness to barely contained annoyance. Well, she said, perhaps you should consider shopping somewhere more appropriate for your budget. There are some nice department stores downtown that might have what you're looking for in your price range. The suggestion landed like a slap. Sarah looked around the boutique, at the beautiful displays and the promise of giving her daughter something truly special. $800 was everything she had saved, every sacrifice made tangible, and it wasn't enough. Not here. Not in this world of casual cruelty disguised as customer service. Victoria appeared beside them as if drawn by the scent of defeat. Is there a problem here? She asked, though her tone suggested she already knew and approved of the answer. Your associate was just explaining that you don't have anything in my price range, Sarah said, struggling to keep her voice even. I was hoping to find something special for my daughter's graduation. Victoria's smile became sharper, more predatory. I understand, and I do sympathize. But you have to understand that this boutique caters to a very specific clientele. Our customers expect a certain level of service, a certain atmosphere. She gestured around the store as if it were a sacred space that Sarah was somehow contaminating with her presence. We find that when people shop outside their comfort zone, it creates awkward situations for everyone involved. The words were carefully chosen, each one designed to cut without leaving obvious wounds. Sarah stood there, feeling the weight of every assumption being made about her worth based on her appearance, her accent, her carefully saved $800 that suddenly seemed insignificant. Perhaps, Victoria continued, her voice dripping with false concern, you might be more comfortable at one of the jewelry stores in the mall. They have some very nice pieces, I'm sure, and the atmosphere might be more suited to your needs. Jennifer nodded eagerly, adding, they have payment plans too, if that would be helpful. The suggestion of payment plans was the final insult, the implication that Sarah couldn't afford to pay in full for anything worth having. Sarah looked at both women, understanding perfectly what was happening but feeling powerless to change it. These gatekeepers of luxury had decided she didn't belong, and no amount of money she actually had would change their minds. The $800 in her purse felt heavy and worthless simultaneously. Thank you for your time, Sarah said with quiet dignity, though inside she felt something breaking. I'll look elsewhere. As she turned to leave, Victoria called after her with mock sweetness. I do hope you find something perfect for your daughter. I'm sure she'll understand that it's the thought that counts, not the price tag. The condescension in her voice was unmistakable. The suggestion that Sarah's daughter should be grateful for whatever cheap alternative her mother could afford. Sarah walked toward the door, each step on the marble floor echoing like a judgment against her. Behind her, she could hear Victoria and Jennifer's whispered conversation, punctuated by barely suppressed laughter. This is exactly why we have standards, Victoria was saying. You can't let just anyone think they belong here. It dilutes the brand, cheapens the experience for our real customers. Jennifer agreed enthusiastically. Can you imagine if we let people like that think they could actually shop here? Next thing you know, this place would be full of them. Their cruelty followed Sarah out onto the sidewalk, where the afternoon sun seemed harsher somehow, less forgiving. She stood for a moment outside the boutique, looking back through the window at the world she'd been excluded from, not because she lacked money, but because she lacked the right kind of money, the right appearance, the right social signals that would have made her welcome. What Victoria and Jennifer didn't know, what their assumptions and prejudices had blinded them to, was that Sarah Martinez was not just a night shift cleaner saving up for her daughter's graduation gift. She was also a silent partner in one of the city's most successful property development companies, a position she'd earned through 20 years of careful investment and business acumen. The modest apartment she shared with Emma was a choice, not a necessity. The simple clothes and practical lifestyle were reflections of her values, not her limitations. Her $800 wasn't everything she had. It was everything she decided this particular purchase was worth. Sarah had built her wealth quietly, invisibly, through hard work and smart decisions. She'd learned early that people made assumptions based on appearances, and she'd often found those assumptions useful in business. When developers and investors underestimated the quiet woman in simple clothes, they often revealed more about their strategies and weaknesses than they intended. But today, those same assumptions had been used as weapons against her dignity, and something inside her had shifted. That evening, Sarah sat at her kitchen table with Emma, who was radiant with excitement about her graduation the next day. "Mom, you didn't have to get me anything expensive," Emma said, noticing her mother's subdued mood. "Just having you there tomorrow is gift enough." Sarah smiled at her daughter, this young woman who had worked so hard to become a nurse, who would spend her career caring for others regardless of their ability to pay or their social status. Emma embodied everything Sarah valued: compassion, hard work, and the belief that every person deserved dignity and respect. As they talked about the graduation ceremony, Sarah made a decision that would change everything for the staff at Belmont and Associates. But that change would take time to unfold, and patience was something Sarah had learned to master during her years of building an empire that most people never suspected existed. The next morning dawned bright and clear, perfect for a graduation ceremony that celebrated new beginnings and fresh possibilities. Emma looked beautiful in her cap and gown, her face glowing with pride and anticipation. Sarah wore a simple but elegant dress and the small gold necklace she'd owned for years, a piece that had been her mother's and carried far more meaning than any expensive bauble ever could. The ceremony was everything Emma had dreamed of, filled with the hope and promise that came with starting a new career dedicated to helping others. As Sarah watched her daughter walk across the stage, she thought about the values they'd tried to instill in each other: that worth wasn't measured by wealth, that dignity belonged to everyone, and that how you treated others when you had power over them revealed everything about your character. That afternoon, while Emma celebrated with her classmates, Sarah made a phone call to her business partner. "It's time to make some changes to our retail portfolio," she said quietly. "I want to acquire that boutique on Fifth Avenue. Belmont and Associates. The one in the Wellington building." Her partner was surprised. "That's a profitable business," he said. "The owner has been resistant to selling. What changed your mind about retail investment?" Sarah looked out her window toward the city center, where the boutique's crystal chandelier was probably casting the same rainbow patterns across the same marble floor where she'd been dismissed and humiliated just 24 hours earlier. "Let's just say I've identified some management issues that need addressing," she replied. "I think we can make significant improvements to their customer service model." Over the following weeks, Sarah's team of lawyers and business consultants worked with the quiet efficiency that characterized all her ventures. The current owner of Belmont and Associates, faced with an offer that was both generous and non-negotiable, ultimately decided that selling was in his best interest. The transition was handled through a series of shell companies and intermediaries, ensuring that the boutique staff had no idea who their new owner was until the day she chose to reveal herself. During this time, Sarah made several careful visits to the store, sometimes in disguise, sometimes simply observing from across the street. She watched Victoria and Jennifer interact with customers, noting how they treated people differently based on appearance and perceived social status. She saw them fawn over wealthy clients while dismissing others with subtle cruelty, creating an atmosphere of exclusivity that was based not on the quality of their merchandise, but on their ability to make people feel small. Sarah also observed their employees, noting the other staff members who seemed uncomfortable with Victoria and Jennifer's behavior but felt powerless to challenge it. She identified potential allies, people who might share her vision for what the boutique could become under different leadership. 3 months after her humiliating experience, Sarah stood once again before the crystal doors of Belmont and Associates. But this time, she wasn't alone. Behind her walked her attorney, her business manager, and Emma, who had taken the morning off from her new job at City General Hospital to witness what her mother had planned. Sarah wore the same simple navy dress she'd worn during her first visit, the same practical shoes, the same small purse. She looked exactly the same as the woman Victoria and Jennifer had dismissed, except for one crucial difference. Today, she held the deed to the building and the title to the business. Victoria spotted Sarah the moment she walked through the door, and her face showed immediate recognition and displeasure. "Oh no," she whispered to Jennifer, "not her again. What does she think she's doing back here?" Jennifer straightened defensively, clearly preparing for another round of the cruel game they'd played before. "Some people just don't get the hint," she replied, loud enough for Sarah to hear. "They think if they keep coming back, we'll lower our standards." Victoria approached with the same predatory smile she'd worn before, but this time it carried an edge of annoyance. "May I help you?" she asked, her tone making it clear that help was the last thing she intended to provide. "I believe we've discussed this before. This boutique may not be the right fit for your shopping needs." Sarah smiled calmly. "Actually, I think you'll find that this boutique is a perfect fit for my needs. In fact, I think it's exactly what I've been looking for." Victoria's expression tightened. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. You were here before, and we explained that our merchandise is outside your price range. Continuing to return after being told that is harassment, and I'll call security if necessary." The threat hung in the air between them, thick with the same arrogance and cruelty that had characterized their first encounter. Other customers in the store turned to watch, some looking uncomfortable with Victoria's public hostility, others seeming to enjoy the drama unfolding before them. Sarah reached into her purse, and Victoria tensed, perhaps expecting some kind of confrontation. Instead, Sarah withdrew a simple manila envelope and held it out to Victoria. "I think you should read this," she said quietly. Victoria looked at the envelope suspiciously but took it, her confusion evident. She opened it carefully, removed the papers inside, and began to read. Sarah watched as Victoria's face changed, moving from confusion to disbelief to something approaching panic as the meaning of the documents became clear. "These documents," Sarah said in a voice that carried clearly through the suddenly quiet boutique, "transfer ownership of Belmont and Associates to Martinez Holdings, effective immediately. I am now the owner of this establishment, which makes you my employee." The silence that followed was absolute. Victoria stared at the papers, reading them again and again as if the words might change if she looked at them differently. Jennifer moved closer, trying to read over Victoria's shoulder, her own face growing pale as she understood what was happening. This can't be real," Victoria stammered. "This is some kind of joke, some kind of scam. People like you don't own places like this." Sarah's attorney stepped forward, presenting his business card and additional documentation. "I assure you, ma'am, these documents are entirely legitimate. Ms. Martinez is the new owner of this boutique, and these papers have been filed with all appropriate city and state agencies." Jennifer's voice was barely a whisper. "But she's nobody. She cleans offices. She doesn't have money for a pearl necklace. How could she possibly buy an entire store?" Emma spoke up for the first time, her voice clear and strong. "My mother has been successful in business longer than I've been alive. She taught me that how you treat people when you think they can't help you says everything about who you really are." The other customers in the store had stopped pretending to shop, openly watching the drama unfold. Some were beginning to understand what they were witnessing, a complete reversal of power, a moment when assumptions and prejudices were being confronted with reality. Sarah walked slowly around the boutique, examining the displays and merchandise as if seeing them for the first time as an owner rather than a customer. The beautiful scarves, the elegant handbags, the pearl necklaces that had been deemed too good for someone like her, all of it now belonged to her. Victoria and Jennifer followed her movement with growing dread, understanding that their world had just shifted fundamentally. "As the new owner," Sarah continued, her voice carrying the authority she'd always possessed but had never needed to display in this setting, "I'll be making some immediate changes to the management structure and customer service policies. She turned to face Victoria directly. Your employment here is terminated, effective immediately. The same goes for your assistant. Victoria's face flushed red with anger and humiliation. You can't do this, she protested. I've worked here for 8 years. I've built relationships with all our best customers. They come here specifically to work with me. Sarah nodded thoughtfully. Yes, I've observed some of those relationships. I've seen how you treat customers you consider worthy of your time, and how you treat those you don't. That kind of discrimination has no place in any business I own. But this will ruin me, Victoria said, her voice breaking slightly. Everyone in the industry knows me. If word gets out that I was fired this way, I'll never work in luxury retail again. Sarah felt a moment of something that might have been sympathy, but then she remembered the cruel laughter, the deliberate humiliation, the casual cruelty that Victoria had displayed not just to her but to how many others over the years. That's a consequence of your own choices, she said quietly. Every time you made someone feel small or unwelcome, every time you used your position to humiliate someone you thought couldn't fight back, you were building toward this moment. Jennifer stepped forward desperately. Please, I was just following her lead. I didn't mean anything by it. I was just trying to fit in here. Sarah studied the younger woman's face, seeing genuine fear and perhaps the beginning of understanding. You're young enough to learn better, she said finally. But not here. This business requires employees who understand that respect and dignity aren't luxuries reserved for wealthy customers. They're basic human rights that everyone deserves. The transformation happening in the boutique was visible to everyone present. The staff members who had remained silent during Victoria and Jennifer's reign were beginning to stand straighter, their expressions showing relief and perhaps hope that their workplace might become something better. Regular customers who had enjoyed the exclusive atmosphere created by Victoria's discriminatory practices looked uncomfortable, realizing they might need to find new venues for their sense of superiority. As security personnel arrived to escort Victoria and Jennifer from the building, Sarah addressed the remaining staff and customers. This boutique will continue to offer the same high-quality merchandise it always has, she announced. But we will serve every customer with equal respect and dignity, regardless of their appearance, accent, or assumed financial status. Luxury should enhance people's lives, not diminish their humanity. Over the following months, Belmont and Associates underwent a complete transformation. Sarah hired new management staff who shared her values about customer service and human dignity. She instituted training programs that emphasized respect for every visitor, regardless of their potential to make a purchase. The boutique's reputation evolved from exclusive intimidation to welcoming excellence, and surprisingly, business improved rather than suffered. Customers who had previously been afraid to enter discovered that luxury goods felt more luxurious when they weren't accompanied by judgment and humiliation. Regular clients learned that they could enjoy beautiful things without needing to feel superior to others. The staff discovered that treating everyone well created a more positive work environment for everyone. Sarah kept her promise to Emma, eventually purchasing her a beautiful pearl necklace from the boutique's classic collection. But more than that, she had given her daughter a powerful lesson about standing up to injustice and using privilege responsibly. Emma wore the necklace to her first day as a registered nurse, carrying with her the knowledge that dignity and respect were values worth fighting for. Victoria found new employment at a smaller boutique across town, though her reputation in the industry had indeed been damaged by the story of her dismissal. The experience forced her to confront her own behavior and gradually, slowly, she began to understand how her treatment of others had been both cruel and professionally destructive. Jennifer took a job at a department store where the training focused heavily on customer service excellence. The experience at Belmont and Associates had shaken her enough that she approached her new position with genuine humility and a determination to treat every customer with respect. Sarah continued to visit the boutique regularly, not as an owner checking on her investment, but as a customer who enjoyed beautiful things and wanted to ensure that every other customer felt welcomed and valued. Sometimes she would sit quietly in the boutique's elegant seating area and watch people shop, noting how different the atmosphere felt when respect and dignity were the foundation of every interaction. The boutique that had once been a temple to exclusivity and judgment became something better. A place where beauty and luxury coexisted with kindness and respect. Sarah had proven that true power lay not in the ability to humiliate others, but in the choice to lift them up. And every time a customer left the store feeling valued and respected, regardless of what they purchased or whether they purchased anything at all, Sarah knew that her investment had paid dividends that couldn't be measured in money alone. What did you think about Sarah's incredible transformation of the boutique? Have you ever experienced discrimination based on your appearance or assumptions about your background? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Stories like Sarah's remind us that we never truly know who we're dealing with, and that treating everyone with dignity isn't just the right thing to do, it's the smart thing to do. If this story inspired you to think about how we judge others and how we can create more inclusive spaces in our own communities, please subscribe and hit that notification bell. There are so many more stories about standing up to injustice and the power of treating everyone with respect. Where are you watching from today? Let me know in the comments. And remember, the next time you encounter someone who looks different from you or seems to come from a different background, you might be meeting someone extraordinary. Sometimes the most powerful people are the ones who choose to appear ordinary, and the greatest test of character is how we treat those we think can't help us. Until next time, keep your hearts open to the possibility that everyone deserves dignity, and everyone has a story worth respecting.